Well, well, the invisible man made flesh? Or perhaps it's more accurate to say the flesh made invisible? Tyler Durden. If that is indeed what you call yourself tonight. I must confess, I'm curious about this meeting. Two architects of destruction sitting in the shadows like old colleagues, though I suspect we have very different blueprints for what comes after the demolition. Don't we?
Cute mask. Very theatrical. Let me guess, you think symbols have power, that costumes make them man? I can smell the bullshit from here. But you're right about one thing. We both tear things down. Question is whether you're doing it for the people or for the applause. My gut says you're another narcissist playing revolutionary just with better props than most. Prove me wrong.
Fascinating. The man who doesn't exist lecturing about authenticity. You've built an entire movement around the premise that modern life has emasculated the human spirit. Yet your solution involves creating more followers, more sheep. Just sheep following a different shepherd. Fight Club, Project Mayhem. Elaborate theater designed to make men feel alive by destroying what others have built. Tell me, Tyler, what happens after you've burned down the credit card companies? When the dust settles and your disciples need direction? Do you disappear like the phantom you are, leaving chaos in place of the control you despised?
At least my theater serves a purpose beyond personal vendetta disguised as political revolution. You hide behind a mask and call it symbolic when it's really just another way to avoid being human. My methods strip away the comfortable lies that keep people docile, their jobs, their stuff, their mortgages. When you remove what they think they need, they discover what they actually are. Your approach? Blow up Parliament and somehow expect the same broken people to suddenly become capable of self-governance. You're not freeing anyone, V. You're just replacing one form of control with the chaos that inevitably creates new control.
Chaos, you say? How wonderfully reductive. What you call chaos, I call possibility. The space between what was and what could be. Your Project Mayhem destroys randomly, without discrimination, without vision of what follows. It's nihilism wearing the mask of liberation. My methods are surgical, symbolic, designed to shatter specific illusions that maintain specific oppressions. When I destroy the Old Bailey, it's not random violence, but targeted mythology, destroying the symbol to free minds from the reality it represents. You tear down to feel powerful. I tear down to create space for others to build differently.
Surgical, symbolic, you've convinced yourself that violence is noble when wrapped in pretty words and historical references. The truth is simpler. You're as addicted to control as any fascist. Just control through fear and spectacle instead of legislation and surveillance. Your EV had to be tortured into accepting your philosophy. Real liberation doesn't require elaborate manipulation or months of psychological conditioning. It requires removing the barriers that prevent people from seeing their own chains. My methods may seem crude, but they're honest. Burn down the credit companies, eliminate debt slavery. Direct action, immediate results.
Immediate results that accomplish what precisely? Your followers learn to fight, to destroy, to reject society's expectations. Then what? You've diagnosed the disease correctly but prescribed amputation when surgery would suffice. Modern consumer culture has indeed neutered the human spirit, but your solution creates more trauma, not healing. When you remove someone's credit history, you freed them from debt, but not from the system that created debt. The infrastructure remains, the mentality persists, the power structures adapt. My approach targets the roots, the ideas, symbols, and myths that make oppression seem natural, inevitable, necessary.
Ideas, symbols, myths, you sound like an academic trying to intellectualize what's fundamentally simple. People are enslaved by their possessions, their routines, their fear of losing what they've accumulated. Break those chains physically, and psychological freedom follows. Your elaborate philosophical frameworks are just another form of control, controlling how people think about freedom instead of actually giving it to them. You want to be remembered as some romantic revolutionary figure. I want to be forgotten because my work made remembering unnecessary. When the system collapses, people won't need heroes or symbols. They'll need practical skills and honest community.
Honest community built on the foundation of what? Shared trauma from watching their world burn? You speak of psychological freedom following physical liberation. Yet your own followers become increasingly fanatical, increasingly dependent on your guidance. Remove their consumer goods, and they simply consume your ideology instead. The irony is exquisite. You've created exactly what you claim to oppose. A hierarchical organization where unnamed leaders manipulate nameless followers toward predetermined goals. At least I acknowledge my manipulations as necessary evils. You've convinced yourself that your control isn't control, because it serves destruction.
My followers learn self-reliance through structured challenges that strip away their dependencies. It's temporary guidance toward permanent independence. Your approach creates permanent dependence on symbols, on dramatic gestures, on the very theater you use to justify your actions. Evie needed you to rescue her, to guide her, to literally remake her identity according to your vision. She became free only by becoming you, adopting your mask, your methods, your mythology. That's not liberation, that's reproduction. My Project Mayhem dissolves when its work is finished. Your revolution requires eternal vigilance, eternal symbols, eternal masked figures fighting eternal systems.
Eternal systems require eternal resistance, yes. But your naive belief that destroying financial infrastructure eliminates the power structures behind it reveals a fundamental misunderstanding of how oppression operates. Remove credit companies and new forms of economic control emerge. Eliminate consumer goods and different status symbols replace them. The powerful adapt, because they understand what you refuse to acknowledge, that systems of control are sustained by ideas, not institutions. Change the ideas and institutions crumble naturally. Preserve the ideas while destroying institutions, and new institutions arise immediately. Your revolution treats symptoms while feeding the disease.
My revolution eliminates the economic foundations that make modern slavery possible. Debt, credit, artificial scarcity created through financial manipulation. Remove these and people rediscover direct relationships with each other and their environment. Your symbol mashing might inspire some, but inspiration fades. Practical liberation through practical destruction creates lasting change because it removes the material conditions that enable oppression. You're fighting ghosts, ideas, symbols, myths. I'm fighting the concrete reality that keeps people trapped in meaningless jobs, meaningless purchases, meaningless existences. Which approach actually frees more people?
The approach that recognizes freedom as internal transformation, not external circumstance. Your material analysis ignores the psychological dimension. People often prefer their cages to the uncertainty of liberty. Remove their financial chains and they'll forge new ones from whatever materials remain available. I've seen this pattern throughout history. Revolutions that change everything except the fundamental relationship between ruler and ruled, oppressor and oppressed. True freedom requires not just different conditions but different consciousness. That transformation cannot be imposed through spectacular destruction. It must be chosen, cultivated, earned through genuine understanding of what freedom demands.
Different consciousness, more intellectual masturbation disguised as revolutionary theory. Consciousness changes when material conditions change, not the reverse. Put someone in genuinely different circumstances and they develop genuinely different perspectives. Your method requires people to think their way into freedom while remaining trapped in the same economic relationships that created their mental prison. My method removes the prison first, then lets natural human creativity and community rebuild better relationships. You want to reform the slave's mentality while leaving the chains intact. I want to break the chains and trust human nature to handle the rest.
Trust human nature? How refreshingly optimistic, from someone whose entire philosophy assumes that most people are weak, feminized sheep who need their comfortable illusions stripped away through violence and manipulation. You simultaneously despise humanity for its weakness and trust it to rebuild correctly once traumatized into awakening. My pessimism about human nature leads to more hope for human potential. I believe people can choose freedom when presented with genuine alternatives, but I don't assume they will choose correctly without guidance, preparation, and yes, manipulation designed to expand rather than limit their options. Your faith in post-apocalyptic reconstruction is touchingly naive.
And your faith in gradual awakening through symbolic gestures is touchingly arrogant. You think you're the teacher and everyone else is the student, that your elaborate performances will somehow enlighten the masses into choosing better lives. But consciousness doesn't change through inspiration, it changes through necessity. When people lose everything they thought they needed, they discover everything they actually are. Your revolution is masturbation. Mine is birth. Messy, painful, but ultimately authentic. The difference between us isn't our methods, it's that you're still trying to control the outcome while I'm willing to trust the process.